What's up, YouTubers? Got an interesting video today. It's gonna be a longer one than I normally make. It's gonna include a few things. It's gonna involve more so thoughts, you could say thoughts review of a particular knife of mine, as well as a lot of history behind it. I've got a lot of notes, well, quite a few notes regarding it. This Shredder pen written. Side note, and it's a knife with a lot of history, so I felt that while there's a lot of information on the internet, there has not been a YouTube video yet that really outlined it, like in video format. Plus a follow-up, you could say, on my sharpening journey as to how I'm improving sharpening skills-wise and how it's going in the freehand sharpening technique, because that's kind of the technique I settled on. So I guess without further ado, let's get right into the whole content of it. So, what is this, you may ask? For those who are collectors of classic knives or Japanese knives, will know what this is. For those who don't, you'll probably think this is a straight razor. It is not a straight razor, even though it shares a good amount of resemblances to one. It is a traditional Japanese friction folder. And while there is some controversy in the exact name of this knife, I'll get to that later. It's safe to say that this is the Higonokami. So, before I go any further, I'd like to apologize to all Japanese viewers that I am going to probably butcher all of the pronunciations of the names of cities, and I mean that with no disrespect. I am not familiar with the Japanese script or the language, so I cannot honestly say that I know how to properly enunciate every single syllable. So please accept my apology in advance. So the Higonokami has a very rich history, and when I saw this knife first debuted by Cutlery Lover last year, I believe end of last year, early of this year, I was very interested in it. So I decided to look up more about this knife, and my searching eventually, I learned a bit more about it, and I ended up buying it off worldknives.com. And they have quite a few knives from all over the world, and they had this for a relatively reasonable price. I think I paid under 40, I'm pretty sure, all shipped to my door, which is a lot more than what you'd pay in Japan probably, but what can you say? The yen is quite high, and shipping to Canada ain't cheap. So this is a knife. Just some technical specs about the knife. I don't have the weight on me, but I can tell you right now it's incredibly lightweight, or at least it feels lightweight. It is about 5.25 inches closed. The blade length is about 3.75 inches. To give you perspective, here it is against my Emerson Horseman. Strider SNG. So it's a very thin knife, but it is a long knife. Surprisingly longer knife than what I normally would carry. It is an incredibly effective utility knife, but more so for me, it's I think now going to be more of a collectible, just due to the fact of its history. So, the steel is a sanmai, or laminated steel, of carbon steel, a very hard carbon steel sandwiched between, I guess, slightly less hard carbon steel, a friction folder with obviously the lever, and the handle is made of brass. It is a very simple construction. There's not a lot of bells and whistles, and there's not a lot to it. The design has remained unchanged since its inception, and now I'm going to go into history. If you're not interested in history, fast forward, because this might take a few minutes. So, this knife is, as one member on the British Blade forums called, a living fossil, because it is one of the oldest knife trademarks still in production. Its design has literally remained unchanged since the late 1800s. That is a long period. This puts it up there easily with knives such as the Duk or the Opinel, knives that are classic in nature that haven't changed because they retain a certain charm, a certain uniqueness about them, that by taking that away, the originality, anything changes to this knife would just detract from the history that it has in it. So You could say that it was originally first created around 1896 in the Meiji era in Japan by a gentleman named by, I'm going to ruin this one, Tasaburo Shigematsu. And this is a design that he brought back from the Kyushu province to, I think it's the Miki area. And he had a custom knife maker in that area, I believe Teji Murakami. This is hard. To custom make this knife and develop this knife. So it ended up being, and it retains to this day, official Higonokamis are made in the Miki region of Japan. To this day. How this knife came about, you could say, and the name itself came about, actually it's a very interesting history. In around 1877, when the United States pretty much forced the Japanese to open their borders, a bit of a rebellion started, and by the time, let's say the late 1800s, a little further, when the last rebel samurais were defeated, they were pretty much stripped of their swords. So blacksmiths who really specialized in making beautiful katanas and other forms of swords found themselves out of business. Now, basic rule of business is, if you're out of one source of revenue, you got to have a diversification. You got to have other forms of revenue streams. So they got to find another way of doing it. Well, they knew how to make swords, so scale it down, make knives, because they could still make knives. And this became an added source of revenue. The name itself, Higonokami, technically comes from, you could say, a phrase, Higo no Kami, which is Lord of Higo. And Higo is the old name of the Kyushu province. So, essentially, Lord of Kyushu, if you want to move backwards. But it was also a name given to, it was also an aristocratic title given to powerful samurai. And the last Higo no Kami was Matsudaira Katamori. Oh god, if Virtual Vice watches this, I apologize to him directly. And he was the last one, actually, and was involved in the final battle against the, well, let's say, US troops, and lost. So he was the final Higonokami. So this eventually gained popularity, and in 1907, since the Miki region was a land which had, it was an area of Japan that had quite a few resources, and a lot of knife makers gathered around there, and so a knife makers guild came up, and in 1907 they trademarked the Higonokami design. Only they could produce this knife, and they did it for quite a while, and it enjoyed a very popular boom. This became the standard knife carried by everyone, just a utility tool by kids in their school when they went to school, adults when they just needed a utility knife. This is what they carried, and it was quite popular and very acceptable for a long period of time, until the phrase the coup de grace was delivered in around the 1961, when unfortunately a 17-year-old mentally disturbed boy slashed the leader of the Socialist Party out in public with the sword, a katana if I'm not mistaken. And as you could probably relate, an action like this pretty much happens right in the street, caused a lot of hysteria, and knives were pretty much restricted to a very large degree then in Japan. And if you can't carry this, who's going to buy this? And this was a very painful blow to the makers of this knife, and pretty much all blades in the country. So pretty much now, Japan, even to this day, has incredibly strict knife laws. You could say it's partially responsible because of this incident. So anti-knife hysteria, I tell you, it's everywhere. And so unfortunately, like a lot of great designs in this world, it just pretty much got regulated to customers and to the nostalgia of a few who wanted to keep this design alive. Unfortunately, like in a lot of first world countries where there's a lack of skilled artisans to replace the retiring age artisans, there are not a lot of blacksmiths who can make this style of knife anymore. And unfortunately, there's only one more member left, and he is an elderly gentleman. So to be dead honest, I don't know how long he'll keep making it for. Probably not a lot longer. And once he's gone, technically there is no official Higonokami, because he's the last living member of this guild, and there is nobody, I believe, left to replace him. If somebody has information otherwise, please let me know. I'll annotate it in the video. So, to go back to the history, you could say all official Higonokamis are sold in a blue gold box and are made by the final, you could say, last member of this guild, Motosuke Nagao. And the box is going to be blue and gold, and I'll include a link in the description that shows you that. Mine technically is not an official Higonokami because there's another craftsman by the name of Miyamoto Seikakushu, and he's been making these since 1932. Unfortunately, I don't believe he's any more part of the guild for some odd reason, and he cannot call these the Higonokami. He calls them the Higonaifu, which is essentially Higo knife. And the materials, the construction are all the same. Some argue this has superior fit and finish, but this is the exact same. The laminated steel, the brass, the friction folder, the lever, the design on the blade, on the handle, I mean, these are all the same. So, and it's also now some custom knife makers are taking into account and creating more elaborate versions of it. So, you could say it's having a little bit of a resurgence coming back, and you know, that's a nice thing. It's nice to see knives with history have a resurgence. So, just a couple more facts and I'll get to my sharpening thing. The samurai on the front is apparently Miyamoto Musashi, who was a famous legendary Ronin samurai who was the first to develop the technique of fighting with two swords, or two katanas, and he had apparently never lost a duel in his life. He retired in the Higo region to merely teach eventually, and they've imprinted his, you could say, an image of him on the knife. I'm not sure what this text means. Unfortunately, if somebody knows, please annotate. Let me know and I'll annotate it. Now onto the blade. This overall knife is fantastic. As I mentioned, it's not a knife that I would suggest you do anything too hard with. It is a hard steel, a little brittle, but it takes a very fine edge and will hold it for quite a while. It is carbon steel, so take care. You need to maintain it well. How do I say this? Let's move this lamp a little bit closer. So, as you can see, I'm going to focus on my sharpening job. I did attempt to polish this knife, and I don't think I got rid of a lot of the, all of the carbon. I got rid of a majority of it, but there is still carbon there, and unfortunately I was unable to get rid of it. In person though, it does have quite a nice polish to it, more than its standard came with. This knife was the sharpest one I've ever had out of the box. Ever. So I tried to regain that sharpness. I think I did a decent job. Yes, there's a micro bevel on this polished blade, and I think there are a couple spots where it's not ideal, but it is still, I'd say, quite sharp. So right now I think I'm the same level of sharpness as I was a couple blades ago. I'm not making as messy of an edge degree, but I'm not reaching any higher level of sharpness yet. I might alter my technique or just keep at it. We'll see, you know, maybe I'll get better with it at a time. As you can tell, it's a very sharp knife, razor sharp. Popped hairs, clean off, easily, like not even an effort. So it's a very sharp knife. So sharpening wise, I think I'm doing a decent job. So overall verdict on this knife. I think if you're a knife collector, I think you should get one of these, especially now while you can still get an official, a classic design Higonokami, because God knows how much longer they'll be producing them. And it's one of those knives, I think, a knife collector, it's nice to have in your collection. It's nice to really own this blade and know that you've got a blade with a lot of history behind it. So really, that's my final verdict, and I hope you go pick this up. Unfortunately, World Knives doesn't have them in stock, but I'm sure you can find them through other means. Sorry for making this video so long, but there's a lot of history. I really wanted to go through it. Thanks for staying tuned, and if you liked this video, please let me know. It's a little different than I normally do. Then again, thanks guys. Peace out. See you around.